Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Peggy Smedley Show. I'm your host, Peggy Smedley. My next guest is returning again to take a deeper dive into the future of work. In fact, the 93rd Lieutenant Governor of South Carolina previously served as the CEO of Quality Business Systems in upstate South Carolina, so she knows a thing or two about running a successful business. Today, a former CEO and now a Lieutenant Governor, she openly admits attracting the right people, companies, and technology to the state. Today's conversation will help us get a clearer idea of what she believes needs to happen to achieve that objective. Please welcome back Pamela Evette, Lieutenant Governor of South Carolina. Lieutenant Governor, welcome back to our conversation.
Oh, this has been wonderful. I'm so excited to be back.
Well, I've enjoyed the conversation. We've talked a little bit about what is the worker of the future, but I thought today we'd kind of dive into a little bit more about, do we need to train our workers differently? I think we've talked about what is that worker, but now I think we have to look about moving forward into what that worker actually needs to be and how we have to look at how do we shape that worker.
So I think we've been doing that little by little, right? STEAM, STEM, these are things that weren't around when I was in school. They weren't even really talked about a lot. When my oldest, who's 26, well, she's 27 now, she had a birthday, was in school. You didn't hear a lot of that. So now we know we have to get our kids more engaged in technology. We have to make them understand it, respect it, learn it. And we're incorporating that, right? We have all kinds of STEM after school, STEM programs, things like that. So I think we're moving that way, but critical thinking is the one thing I hear from businesses over and over again that we've lost sight of, is for our kids to critically think, to understand how to problem solve. For so long, we've kind of taken that away from them. We've problem solved, probably blame us as parents, right? Blame grandparents and teachers, taking those abilities away from our kids. And now businesses are actually hungry for us to put those skills back in.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think a lot of businesses are trying to figure out what to do and how to do it, and that fine line of where we've become in society without doing things they shouldn't do versus how the employee is supposed to be treated, to have that empathy and to try to treat employees properly, how to motivate employees. So do we need to offer different benefits? Is it a combination of it seems to me there's a lot at stake here.
Well, so you said it. My prior life, I've been in business my whole life until I became Lieutenant Governor. And so what I always think, first and foremost, just treat everybody with respect. Those golden rules you learned in, kindergarten class, right? Be nice, talk to people the way you want to be treated. I think people are thirsting, though, for education. Like, everybody wants to feel like there's lifelong learning. My good friend Knut Floor, he was the president of BMW North America. And Knut talks about lifelong learning, and kind of like this was the idea in Germany, where you don't just go to school, you don't just go to college, and then that ends it, right? Is that you continue to be trained, and it's not so much coming to people and going back to school. For example, I'm looking at going back and taking some stuff. You can do things online now. So, people want to feel like they're going to continue to grow and learn new things, and we're meeting people where they are. There are so many choices for continuing education. You can go to a technical school, you can go online, you can go to a hybrid of both. We can now meet people where they are to continue to allow them, the ability to continue to learn. And so I think that's really important. It's being creative. What's a benefit to one person is not a benefit to another. And so I have always been very skeptical when people have said government should intervene and make this happen. Government should stay small and they should stay out of private business, because when I was hiring people, I had a lot of women that were returning back to the workforce, where when they first got out of school, and I think some of your listeners will understand this, what you were earning in your salary was very much how successful you thought your position was, right? You're just out of college, you're 22, and you want to make more than any of your friends. But now you go to a different stage in life, and maybe you're a mom, and you've had your kids, and maybe you've been out of the workforce for a little while. Or you've decided that you don't want to be in a career that's 65 hours a week. You'd rather go back and do something that you love, right? Maybe do some bookkeeping. Even if you're a CPA, I just might want to go be a bookkeeper for somebody. So, I stay fresh and then I continue to do what I like to do, but I don't want the responsibility of working 60 hours, right? So to that employee, the benefit is flexibility, right? And if you start making employers locked in to what they have to offer to every single employee, you're now going to take away what would be a benefit to somebody else, right? So I'm always very careful to say to people, look at what an employee wants. And if you really need good employees that you think will be long-term with you, then try within what you can do, right? Because first and foremost, you got to run your business. But be able to make packages that work for that person's life. It makes all the difference in the world.
You raise a very good point, because we have 5 generations in the workforce today, and we view what is beneficial to one generation different than another.
Yeah.
How we work is different, and so that means companies have to keep that in mind as well.
Absolutely. That's why I go back to saying I hate when we try to make laws, because once something's a law, what you're doing is now you're taking away from business the ability to be flexible and to give people what they want to be able to return to the workforce. And we know we need them. Today in South Carolina, there's 90,000 jobs looking for employees. So we want to make sure that if somebody wants to come back into the workforce, and businesses will do this, right? This has been an employee's market for a long time. And so businesses have to get creative in what they can do. And they know what they can do within the boundaries of trying to get their product out or get their service done. We need to make sure as government that we're not becoming so rigid, that we're not trying so hard to make a law to make everything fair, that we end up hurting the people that are really looking for flexibility within the workplace.
Talk to me, if you will, do we need to leverage technology now, because we have this younger generation that is the future of work, that understands it, and in some cases they almost demand it to even look at a job if the technology's not there?
I think that's important, because you're right, we live in a very high-tech world now. But the one thing that nobody's really talking about, that we're starting to see people get a little bit bolder, COVID, everything went online. Everything went remote. You can work from home. But you know what we lost in that? Mentoring. So when, I started out as a junior accountant, fresh out of college, thought I knew everything. But I worked with an accounting manager who worked then for a partner who showed me things that I could have never figured out on my own. We lose the ability to connect with other people, which I think is bad, because we've seen depression and anxiety just, kind of skyrocket since COVID, where people are at home. I do believe that as humans, we like to interact. We like to talk to each other. And so we have to bring back into the conversation that technology plays a role, but so does human interaction. And any successful person will tell you they got there because of a good mentor.
So then let's talk about this rush of ChatGPT and generative AI that they all say you don't need to have that, because you can use that to put the knowledge of the mentor in that. I mean, that's the idea. So that's now kind of counterintuitive to what you just said. Do we have to worry that we're still going to have all this depression because all that knowledge is going to put in one of those tools? I mean, just throwing that out. I mean, because it seems to me like we're going in that direction of saying all of that knowledge that was there that mentors have are going to be put in that. I don't know if it's going to be immediately. It'll be a couple of years from now. What do you think? Are we still going to have a bigger problem with that?
I think so. I don't think you can ever replace AI for a human experience. All right. I mean, it can give you statistics. It can give you data. But I'll tell you, I was part of the Hunt Keen Leadership Fellows out of DC, where you talk about education. And the number one thing we talked about, think about, so my daughter's 27, probably when she was about 5 or 6, all of these reading tablets that came out, right? Leapfrog had them, and they could hold on to them, and it could read to them, right? But didn't show inflection. There wasn't that human contact. They have found that nothing, if you want to do the best thing you can for your grandchildren, buy them a book, put them on your lap, interact with them, and read to them. the best gift you can give to them, because now they're learning how to use words, they're interacting with you, they're using facial expressions, things that AI will never replace. And so I want to make sure that we don't go so far down that rabbit hole that we start to find out what we're, like the downfalls we're seeing in reading and what just that human touch does for us as people.
So looking at that, we're going to have to use technology. We have to have a balance, is
Yes.
what I'm hearing you say, because we either have gone so fast, so furiously right now since COVID, it's almost to a detriment of what we're seeing to the health of workers. So we have to either get them back into somewhat in the office so they have those water cooler conversations, those mentors that kind of saying, how do I get problem solve a little bit? How do we find that balance? How do companies now, because it seems to me people are saying, I've enjoyed being home. I don't know that I want to get back in the car. Is there a way that you entice people to say, yeah, but there is a benefit going into that office and meeting those mentors?
I think so. I think you just have to be a leader, right? That is, it's like being a parent, right? It's not always glamorous and everybody doesn't always like what you're saying. But if the data is telling us that, if we believe that, if we feel our businesses need that, if, eventually we're starting to see more and more business, right when COVID happened, everybody started to think, well, maybe this remote working and working from home isn't so bad. But now, a few years in, they're starting to say, I think I want my workforce to come back into the office. I think we're missing something. If you're in a different department, it's not so easy to get Sally in HR, right? Because now you're trying to call her and everybody else is trying to call her and you're sending teams and you're doing all this stuff. But there's something about being able to walk over there and ask her a question and talk through it. And I think businesses are starting to see that. And so again, it goes back to being a good leader. I think history has shown us that we've overcorrected a lot in our lives, right? We want to change something, we go really far in the opposite direction, and then we need to dial it back because we realize that the sweet spot is usually in the middle. So good leadership is going to be a big deal. Responsible technology, we need responsibility when it comes to technology. I truly believe that. I don't think we should stifle it. But I think we have to make sure that as we're progressing with AI, that we're doing it responsibly. I don't want to have a generation of kids who don't know how to write because they have allowed AI to write every paper that they've ever had. I was very against people getting rid of cursive writing because how do you read the documents of old if you don't understand cursive? How do you get back to that kind of history if you can't read? How do you sign a legal document? I mean, there's so many things when everybody said, well, nobody really handwrites anything anymore. What does it matter? I think it does matter because we can't let technology take over everything because at some point we have to control technology. We don't want technology to ever get smarter than we are.
So looking at all of this right now, is there a way to kind of help us understand at what point, we let this younger generation who is so driven, they are digital natives.
Oh, yeah.
And they really say, look, this is the way I live my life. And how do we not have them corrected to the point that they say, this is what I want. I want to order all my McDonald's online. I don't want to have to go to McDonald's. It's just my life now. Everything I do is online. That's why, big box retailers are closing up, just the things that we're talking about. Is there a correction that we do that way, or we say, no, this is just a natural progression? Or do we see, just like what you're saying, we went so far, but now we see, some people like to go to stores. Is there a way to find those digital natives to kind of say, there's a balance that we have to have for society to make sure that we show them? Or is that mentoring again that say, look, we have to show you why we need to do this for, work, live, play kind of a thing?
I think you've hit it right in the head. It's collaboration. We have to get all stakeholders at a table, get all stakeholders in a room, and be able to talk this through. Because what we don't want, like you said, we don't want it to go so far one way that we're trying to dial it back. I think with experience comes knowledge, and you need to put those experienced people in a room with the idea people, right? I mean, I can remember being new and green in a career and thinking that I had these ideas that nobody ever had before, right? How silly is that? That just comes with being naive. And everybody at the table kind of giggling and going, just sit down and listen for a few minutes. And then you find out like, oh, all these things were tried. And oh, these are the failures that came out of that. So I think we need to bring that excitement and that technology to the table and couple it with experience. And that's how you get, I believe, from overcorrecting. I think so many times in our past, we've had the experience lead the charge. Now we've seen what happens when you let like the creativity lead the charge. Somewhere in the middle is always the best idea. So collaboration is what I have felt my entire life has been the game changer, whether it's in business, whether it's here in government. When we all sit down at a table, throw all the best suggestions on the table, and then we kind of weed it out to figure out what the best solution is.
And that's the really exciting thing about the worker of the future is that we need to let all of these workers see there's that middle ground for all of them. Whatever we have this future worker, that it's not one way or the other. There's that middle ground is what you want them to understand mainly.
Absolutely. And we want everybody to think that their ideas are valid, right? I think when you start trying to quiet people or really push them down, that's when you kind of get this, well, then I'm going to go in my own direction. I think as long as we have really good interactive dialogue where everybody feels like they're bringing a worthwhile idea to the table, we can keep moving these balls forward. I know down here in the State House, that's when I see the best things happen, is when everybody sits at the table and figures out, what is the best way to write a bill? What is the best way to introduce this into the public? How do we solve this problem? The more ideas you can get to the table, the better off you are. That you get to an outcome or a solution that is so robust and it has a piece of everybody, and you tend to make more people happy with that.
So ideally, we talk about there's 90,000 jobs just here in the state that need to be filled, but there's still a lot of people who say they don't have jobs. How do we bring that together so that they understand, get those folks that are looking for jobs to understand the opportunities? Because there seems to be, we need to fill these gaps. There's this disconnect. How do you do that, just in this state alone?
So we work with DO, our Department of Workforce. So what they've been doing is they've been going out to our rural communities, right? They were out in Union, they've been in the PD, and they have a mobile job fair. So they can get to people and what they would consider high unemployment areas to talk about what are the careers that are available to them. What new things, what new kinds of businesses are coming into their area, and how do we train you up? So when you have a work fair or a job fair, you don't just have the businesses there, you have the technical schools there. And you want to make sure, like in Spartanburg, you have Spartanburg Community College there. So we can talk about, like, this is what we can do. DO does a great job of doing certifications online. And so they'll tell you what you need. They'll help guide you through it. We have such great programs. And let me tell you, the biggest problem we have is we can't seem to get all that information out. Usually the most angry people that come up to me when I'm out and about say, we should be doing this. I'm usually happy to say, probably 98% of the time, we're doing that. Let me tell you how to get to it. But we are. If you go on with DO, you can see the many opportunities they have. They have job counselors who will sit down and tell you, if you just say, listen, I've been, bussing tables for 2 years. I need a better job. But I have a high school degree. I know I need something more. This is what I like to do. They will sit down and tell you exactly what you need and how to get it. And then they'll help you get that job. So we have a lot of resources. That would be the first thing I would do, is reach out to DO. If you're in high school, if you have guidance counselors listening, please open up the door of opportunity, all opportunities for these young kids. Because to send them to a 4-year school to do something that they really didn't want to do just because it checked a box is going to make for a very unhappy worker who will be right here having this conversation about of how do we now get them into a career that they enjoy, or a career that will make them a life-sustaining wage so that they can buy a home and get a new car and go on a vacation, like the things that we all want.
Because we're now going to see the baby boomers retiring in the next few years. We're starting to see it now, and we need to get the next stage, the millennials to be, if there's 80 million of those, half of those not in jobs that they like. This is that great opportunity that you're talking about. So as we wrap up this segment that we have right now, what would you want people to think? Look to these groups to help them find the jobs that they want. That there are opportunities, to feel hopeful, to say, look, this isn't lost opportunity. There's many opportunities.
I think you've hit it right on the head. The only other thing I would add is for all the business owners and all the company executives who are listening, we need to rethink to how we promote from within. Because it used to be, I'm old enough to know when it was an employer's market. And there were times you would put an ad in the paper and you'd get 200 resumes for 1 or 2 jobs. And so what did we do? We artificially put in all these things you had to be to qualify for that job, right? We did that to ourselves to kind of weed out so we could get to a manageable number of resumes. So we said, well, you have to have a 4-year degree, and then you have to have 5 years of work experience, and then we want you to have this. Well, somehow those things have all been ingrained in these positions. I sit down with businesses all the time and say, is it really more beneficial to have somebody with a 4-year degree who doesn't know the culture of your company, that hasn't worked from the ground up? Does he really need a 4-year degree to be a manager? Or would it be better to promote from within, start somebody raise them up yourself, and get rid of these artificial barriers that we created? I mean, there's nothing that made all these steps, right? Something we had to have. So businesses need to change as we evolve. Education needs to change, our guidance counselors, and we need to reach our parents and say, hey, you can send your kids to soccer camp all summer or baseball or lacrosse, and that's great. But the best gift you could give them is the ability to be a productive member of the workforce. And that's not going to cost you anything. And at the end of the day, your kid's going to learn a whole lot of life lessons that they're going to be able to carry with them. So I think there's a little bit of change for everybody in the workforce and the future of tomorrow in the business community.
I love that. I think that opens up a lot of businesses and those looking for the job to see that, maybe they have opportunities. I love that. Lieutenant Governor of South Carolina, again, thank you for spending time with me. We've got a few more of these coming up in the next few months here, so I'm really excited about it. So thank you for all your time today.
Well, thank you, and I'm looking forward to our next get-together.
Oh, it'll be great. All right, listeners, that's all the time we have for this show today. Make sure to subscribe to our episodes each week. As always, share your thoughts with me on Twitter and follow us at Connected World or on LinkedIn. Remember, we broadcast live every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Central. Please check out our website at connectedworld.com or our show website at thepeggysmedleyshow.com. This is the Peggy Smedley Show, your voice for our connected world. And remember, with great technology comes great responsibility. Have an awesome week.